Welcome to Season 2, Episode 27 of Comic Book Nation, the official podcast of Comicbook.com. I'm your host, Kofi Outlaw, and joining me for another quarantine edition of the show is my co-host, Matthew Aguilar's here, as always.
What up?
Janelle Wheeler's with us.
Hey, everybody. Hi.
And our long-lost brother-in-law, Brandon Davis, is back with us.
Whose sister am I married to?
I don't know. Married is a strong word. We'll just say two sisters. Leave it.
Don't.
Yeah. So Brandon Davis is back with us, and today we got a lot to talk about. We have some fun stuff to do. We are going to be reviewing the Netflix sci-fi super-powered thriller Code 8, and we have a special guest with us today. We're going to be interviewing Mr. Robbie Amell, a star of Code 8. You know him from The Flash and a whole bunch of other stuff. We are going to talk to him in an interview. So stick around for that. Or if you don't care about us and you just want the celebrity, you could always hop to the end of the show and get that segment.
Aww.
But we're going to also review Code 8 amongst us with my fine people here. And we have some other fun stuff to talk about. Thanks to Mr. Brandon Davis over there. We have some new insights into Avengers Endgame to discuss on the anniversary of that epic film's release. So we're going to go take a walk down memory lane real quick about that. We got some new horror-themed things coming to TV, one for the kids and one very much not for the kids. So we're going to talk about that. And if we have some time, some other stuff. Oh, Matt, I didn't put it in the show notes, but I know you like comics and stuff, so we'll let you do your thing too, because, you know.
What happens if we hated Code 8 and then Robbie Amell listens to this?
Well, we'll just say.
How could you hate it?
I'm just kidding.
We're just gonna say we didn't know who that person was. Isolation is causing a lot of people mental illness, and we should all try to be understanding. Like, we have things for this. Don't worry about it. So, right up at the top of the show today, as we're recording this is National Superhero Day. But as we wrote on Comicbook.com, National Superhero Day 2020 definitely means something a little different this year. Because of the coronavirus pandemic, we actually have like real life heroes out here every day. And they're not people, yes, the healthcare workers, of course, frontline fighters, people holding it down. I got a lot of doctors, nurses, people I grew up with that are now, out there every day and sleeping in separate homes for their families and doing all that to kind of try to battle this thing. So shout out to all of them, but also the people that, we didn't expect to come heroes this year in the middle. We were all worried about big things, but, this has been a stark reminder that people who work at our fast food restaurants, grocery stores, any kind of essential needs stores that we're at, people stocking Target shelves, just, doing the small job of keeping society going right now is
or like truck drivers,
everybody. All these people that we kind of overlook and don't think about and, take for granted as we just come in and go, bread, bleh, in the grocery store every day. Like now, all I got to say is for the rest of the year, even when this thing dies down, like around Christmas time especially, like we should go unspoken that everybody should be tipping these people. If they have a tip jar out, throw some money in there, show some love, show some appreciation. And just say if you're out there, you'd be surprised how good it is just to say, thank you for being out here. Yep. Thank you for my cheeseburger. Like,
thank you.
Stuff because, they have to take the same considerations we are, and they're out there handling God knows how many people a day. So that's National Superhero Day. We're going to keep it real for one moment, but then we're not going to keep it real for too long because this is Comic Book Nation, and, that's not what we're paid for. So let's get back to what we're paid for. So 1 year ago today, it was a very different world for sure. We were all riding a Marvel high as Avengers Endgame hit theaters. We had so many questions we needed answers to. The mysteries were killing us. But then we got a crazy, timey-wimey, big superhero, full-on comic book movie epic. And we just are coming off another high of the quarantine watch party for Avengers Endgame, organized by your kid truly over there, Mr. Brandon Davis. We had a 2-night thing. Applaud that man.
Seriously, the light of this time for me has been these watch parties. I've been having such an incredible time.
Yeah, Brandon Davis doing something good for the world. I'm as surprised as anybody, but it's a real thing. Like, it's a real thing. It's happening. And you're really making lives better out there, buddy.
I feel like
thank
instead of
you.
brother-in-law, you should have said like stepbrother or something.
I didn't want to get that close with it. That was a little but I'm
Makes
just
it
kidding.
even more weird, guys.
But seriously, you done a good job, BD. And so we had Infinity War on Sunday with the writers Christopher Farkas and Stephen McFeely. Or yes, I always get worried I'm confused their names. Like, I feel like it happens every so often. But
Yeah, Marcus and McFeely.
Yeah. Did you just keep it safe? You just go Eminem, Marcus and McFeely?
Yeah, honestly, when we were swapping emails, like we just like when I was emailing with the Russos, like we just call them Eminem, literally M symbol N M.
Yeah, I mean, that's the way to do it. It's a safe way to do it. But so we had them take over Twitter and kind of take us back through Infinity War. But we had the Russo brothers jump in and do Endgame yesterday, and man, that was epic.
Was
a
that
good time.
planned, or was that kind of like a last minute addition?
I don't know what I'm supposed to say. It was planned. Yes, it was. I mean, we planned it.
That's awesome.
We had Marcus and McFeely ready to go a few weeks ago, and then we started talking with the Russos and Disney, and we all just kind of agreed it would be really cool to let the Russos kind of announce that they were going to do Endgame. And so when we had picked the dates, they were super cool to coordinate with us on the dates, and we were like, it'd be awesome if you guys go and announce this kind of thing. So they went and they kind of watched Infinity War. Like I don't know if they were watching it, but they were present throughout. Like they were kind of commenting on the Marcus and McFeely tweets from the comic book account. And then as soon as that ended, they announced that we were going to do Endgame the next day. And I had kind of let it slip a couple times. Like it was in the LA Times. It was in a couple of videos we did.
You just let it slip a couple
like,
times.
Well, I didn't know that we were going to have this plan come up. Like when Marcus and McFeely committed, like I was like, I want to tell everybody now. And we had this Nick Floyd, one of our editors, super talented, super nice guy. You all know that. Readers might not. The editors are the unsung heroes. And shout out to Richard, who's recording this right now, and Brian, who's editing it. Nick cut this trailer that we couldn't even release until after Infinity War came out, and it was so cool, and it just killed me to wait. But I was like, you know what? Having the Russos announce this is the right play. It's their movie. Let's do this that way. And then we ended up releasing it anyway. It didn't make much sense because it said 2-night event, but we're halfway through it. But it was really cool. And they shared like awesome stuff that like both parties. I mean, Marcus and McFeely had awesome like news and photos and it like from behind the scenes that they were tweeting from Comic Book, and then the Russo brothers shared really cool stuff that like I'm surprised we're still learning so much about these movies because we've already talked about them so much.
I always get really excited when VD is like, what? I didn't know that about a tweet or something. That just like gets me super pumped.
Well, the two things to me I think were the most exciting. One, obviously, Doctor Strange in the Iron Man armor. Like we saw concept art of that, but they released like an image of it. That image has never been shown by anyone before. And it was just tweeted from @Comicbook. Like I don't know.
So amazing.
How that happens. But also
so
one thing I thought was interesting, this isn't like a big mind-blowing fact, but I thought it was really interesting that the footage of Star-Lord dancing when they travel back to 2014 or whatever year that was from Guardians in the MCU, none of that is reused footage. None of that is James Gunn's footage. They reshot everything themselves and just recreated the sets and the scenes and all that. And I thought that was like, that's just an interesting fact that it was cool to learn. Like they dropped stuff like that all night. That was really cool.
Well, there was homework. Everybody was supposed to pick something here that they thought was interesting.
Said mine, but that's fine.
Was it?
That tidbit, the one about having to reshoot Chris Pratt's scene and all of that. Yeah, that was my favorite part. But it was because you were caught off guard. I'm not used to hearing BD get caught off guard about it, like not know something about the film. Like that's a really big deal. As his friend, I'm like, what? No, you already know everything about everything. And he holds it against me sometimes.
When it comes to Marvel movies, everything. Let's not say everything. I've been exposed on my lack of Star Wars knowledge plenty of times on this podcast.
Yeah, Marvel.
I was just letting
and
her
Walking Dead.
I was just letting her open up your ribs for the beating you're about to take.
Oops, sorry.
I'll go. I was actually really happy that somebody, because I've been kind of making fun of this for a long time, but I was kind of happy we got a thorough explanation about how Rhodey gets that upgraded armor.
Yeah.
compound because Scott Lang sees it and brings it, and it kind of has the foresight to bring it, which isn't like a big thing. It's like one of those things that a small edit could have probably enhanced. I had the same kind of problem. I think I even tweeted it on our watch party about Infinity War. It's like one of the cool things in the beginning is when Doctor Strange does the spell that clears everybody out of that like block radius of New York. And I was like, that could have just used a little bit more effect to say like, here's a really cool character thing that just happened, like, and just make it more clear. But yeah, it was just good to see that because when he just shows up on the battlefield, like a lot of people just were like just savagely wrecking him about like Rhodey being like in the basement stripping out the armor and then showing up with like enhanced armor. Like, what the hell?
You want to know what's funny about that you picked that one? When we were at Comic-Con, you weren't in the room. You were on doing another interview somewhere. We had Marcus and McFeely in our suite at Comic-Con, and Jim wanted me to ask them that. How did Rhodey get that suit? And I forgot to ask. Like, we did this 15-minute interview, 20-minute interview. I forgot to ask it. We had talked about a bunch of other stuff. And when they got up to leave the room, Jim asked them. And they told us that, but it wasn't on camera or recorded, so we couldn't run the story. And then when they tweeted it, I was like, Jim, they could finally, like, we could tell people this bit.
I love that
I know that was killing Jim, too. I know it was killing Jim Viscardi.
And Brandy, you never forget anything. There were also moments where they were kind of like criticizing their own writing, like the dialogue between Thor and his mom.
Yeah, don't be who you're supposed to be who you're meant to be.
Yes.
And like, how do we let that get in this script?
I love that they call themselves out. That was great.
What does that even mean? That's the same thing.
He said like he can't, like he thinks about this all the time. It keeps him up at night. That's awesome.
Yeah, they were funny.
Yeah. I also loved the behind the scenes stuff with filming in the cathedral. They showed that they were trying to film in the cathedral for the Thor scenes, and they had to sit there and wait for like a Bach choir to wrap up.
Yeah.
Like, oh, like I was like, this is great. Like this, it just makes it so real. And it's just really cool footage. And then they posted like pictures of asking people like, please don't lean any equipment on this tomb of a saint. Like, it's pretty cool.
Yeah. They also, I mean, there was one from Matt. They showed a video of Brie Larson's.
Oh, you just jumped my gun. I was just about to lay him.
Her first day ever as Captain Marvel aboard the.
How are you gonna not jump in and say the Captain Marvel thing? Did you do your homework? No, because you would have been all over this Captain Marvel thing.
Yes, I did do my homework, actually. I saw that, yes, and that was awesome, actually. And then I also saw their whole thing about, like, why she wasn't, focused on and, like, some of the newer characters and stuff like that. There was a lot, actually. There was a couple of really good Captain Marvel things. Thank you. I just picked something else. I do my homework for this.
That just said deuces to it.
I picked something else, mostly just because I thought it was really interesting from, like, a first Avengers standpoint. And I'm sure, I mean, they've talked about this movie a lot, so I didn't know if it's necessarily new, but I don't remember them ever phrasing it this way. So essentially them explaining why they chose Sam Wilson to be the next Cap as opposed to Bucky. I mean, forever we've, fans, there's a devout following of fans that have wanted Bucky as the next Cap for a long time. And I thought them just coming out and saying, like, it's supposed to be the symbol and the status of Captain America is supposed to be about idealizing, I forget exactly how to put it, but essentially like this idealism and being better than you are, being what you could be, and that Bucky doesn't really fit that. He's kind of this whole thing altogether by himself, and Sam fits that more. And I thought that was really interesting. One, because it's true.
Being who
is that yeah, it's true in the comics as well. But in the comics, he's given a lot more room to grow as a character when he finally does get the shield. But I always actually thought in the books, Sam Wilson's run as Captain America is way more interesting, just from a conceptual level, as well as just the character and the times he finds himself in and things like that, than Bucky. Bucky made the most sense just from a purely like legacy standpoint, but Sam's is really interesting. So I was actually really surprised when they made that move in the movie, and happy at the same time, because I think it makes for a way more interesting series and movie if he's Cap and not Bucky. So it was cool that they broke that down. The other thing was that just from the whole first Avengers scene in the movie weren't there in the original draft. I thought that was really interesting, since that forms. Can
you imagine the movie without
right?
that?
That
Yeah,
forms
that's
such
crazy.
a
Time heist stuff. Yeah.
yeah, like that's
Crazy.
such a significant chunk of that act. So to just take that all away and not have that, it's kind of like, well, how do you get Loki? How do you get like all these things that I obviously they probably wanted in the movie? How do you get there without going back there? That's an interesting thing. So I thought that stuck out to me.
Well,
I really loved that.
I think the worst idea they shared was that they at one point considered Captain America literally being the Soul Stone.
Yeah, I didn't like that.
I was like, wait,
did they say that was one of the things
like
they were most happy
last
didn't
night? Like I
work
tweeted
out?
last night, it would have made sense if it was Hawkeye because he is the heart and soul of the
oh,
Avengers.
stop
Oh,
it.
oh my gosh.
But that's the end of that topic.
Way to kill the momentum, Kofi.
No, I didn't kill it. Your Hawkeye hate killed it. Your Hawkeye.
Hey,
I don't-
you got an
okay.
awe from me.
I don't hate Hawkeye. I just don't think he's the heart and soul of the Avengers, Jim.
How does Endgame start? How does Endgame start, bro? How does Endgame start?
Character who wasn't in the last Avengers movie.
Ugh, that's how
By making you
unimportant
feel
he
it
is.
where?
That's how
In the heart.
unimportant he is. Go away, Hawkeye.
Arrow.
Not
It's
an
an
glad you're
entire
gone.
Avengers movie
An arrow.
out,
I'm glad you're
and
gone.
it was
An
a great-
arrow straight to the heart. That's how Endgame starts.
Bye-bye. See ya.
Honestly,
Please let
he's
Kate
only
Bishop
been
into
a
the
good
door.
guy through a whole movie in half of the Avengers movies.
He's
Dude.
what?
He's only been a relevant hero, like a good guy, in literally half of the Avengers movies.
He's
I'll
the
tell-
heart and soul. He's the reason Black Widow
Stop.
fights so
Okay.
hard in the first
Stop it.
Avengers. He's
You're
the reason why
making me-
Quicksilver
You're
and
so
Scarlet Witch,
This
full
is
of it
Scarlet
right
Witch
now.
fight so
I like
hard in
Hawkeye,
Avengers
and now
2.
you're making me
Saw
sound like
what happened to the
Hawkeye or
Avengers
something.
when he wasn't there in Avengers 3.
The wrong
We
Avenger
saw
died in
what drives
Endgame.
them to
He
bring
should have
everything.
died.
What's the emotional core for them
Snap.
in Avengers 4? Bring back
Them's
Hawkeye's
fighting
family.
words.
I will
That
take
man
Widow
is the
any
Soul
day
Stone.
over Hawkeye. Go away.
who
Kate
got
Bishop
the-
can't get here soon enough.
And who got the Soul Stone? The soul.
Wow,
of the
Matt
Avengers.
is a hater on Hawkeye.
I know. Okay, now he's made me. I feel like now it's all come out. Like I wasn't even hating on him at the beginning of this conversation. And now I am.
I don't even
Screw
like Hawkeye
Hawkeye.
that much. I
Go
just want to expose you. Like I don't even
Ugh.
like that much.
Oh my
So
god.
I have another thing of debate. Someone asked, sorry, I'm switching gears. Someone asked during the tweeting session, did the higher ups have you guys let Loki escape to set up the series? And they responded, no, we just thought it was a juicy way to upset the heist. And then in the comments, people were like, BS, we don't believe you. And then some people are like, oh my God, you created the series without even trying. Like, what are y'all's thoughts on that? I think it was a happy little accident, but I'm obsessed with Loki. So any way to save him makes me happy.
I think the majority of the MCU's continuity is a happy little accident.
Yeah, pretty much.
Ah,
Having done this
Agreed.
for a lot of years, I know it is. I don't even have to.
Yeah, like they find things that work and then they go back and they expand on it. Like, I mean, Project Pegasus, when they mentioned that in Iron Man 2 and then featured it in the Avengers, they absolutely did not plan for 8 years later it to be a Captain Marvel reference.
No.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like
no.
Project Exodus. He says, bring me up everything on Project Goliath, Project Pegasus, and Project Exodus. Goliath turned out to be Ant-Man with Bill Foster and Hank Pym. Pegasus turned out to be Captain Marvel. And a lot of people think Exodus is going to turn out to be the Fantastic Four. It could be anything. It could end up being nothing. But when you link these things, it looks like it's a genius planning. But really, it's like, okay, we have this opportunity to link it. Let's do that. Fans liked this. Let's tie them together. And it works.
Well, what's that tweet? I think it was, I can't remember if it was McFeely or Marcus, but they essentially put, it was one of their tweets or maybe even the Rustos that were like, we plant seeds, sometimes they grow. They were like
it was
teasing.
about Namor. Somebody
Okay,
said
yeah.
that actually Namor referenced the earthquake under the ocean.
Yeah.
We plant seeds, sometimes they grow.
And that tweet perfectly encapsulates the MCU. Like, it's like, hey, we think that's
Loki
cool.
grew. Wait,
Like, I
that
think
sounds
they have
weird,
like
but-
an overarching kind of skeleton of an idea, but
Yeah.
how you throw out the meat on those bones, you know,
Well,
that
man-
involves. I mean, the perfect example right now is something we haven't even seen yet. Thor was totally going to be in Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3. Things changed, and now the Guardians of the Galaxy are going to be in Thor 4. And they're
And
gonna,
like
gonna
yeah, I
adapt
mean,
and change it.
if you know anything about the history of how this all went, like they learned in phase 1, you know, through much trial and much error, getting into phase 2, that you can't be too rigid with the plan. Like you have to adjust for what, like, because you might want to say like Thor is the most important person in the storyline, but if audiences around the world are like, you know, who's this Captain America guy? I love him. It's time to put like some emphasis behind Captain America in like, the ebb and flow of it. So yeah,
Well,
they
has been
learned
really
how to
good
be,
about
like,
that,
more
and I
fluid.
wish DC would get better at that with their
Oh,
movies.
God. Oh, geez, I'm not touching
Just with their movies, like,
I'm not touching it.
but you know what I mean? I feel like
But,
Marvel is really
I
great
actually
at
wanna be off
recognizing
Oh,
that.
you guys are starting. Yeah, you
I
starting
actually
your
want to be
new.
off camera for this.
Yeah,
but
you
I
get
don't
me.
wanna-
You get me wound up. I mean,
I'm
they
not
are.
saying I dislike anything. I'm just saying I wish they could
Well,
be a
you
little bit.
you're not allowed to.
It would be crazy.
Just so
It
you
would be
know.
like, I mean, I agree to you I agree with you to an extent. Like, it'd be crazy if DC started to kind of like embrace their characters and do more variations and put out something that could like win Oscars or something, make a bunch of money. Like, you got a bunch of
Suicide
characters.
Squad won an Oscar.
So did Joker, won multiple Golden Globes and Oscars, and is the most profitable comic book movie of all time. So they're learning a few
That's pretty
things.
amazing.
Yeah,
Yep.
they're learning a few things.
Touche.
But enough with. We're gonna shut the door on DC hate and bring it back.
No, I don't hate
Avengers
DC.
Endgame.
Joker's my
Endgame.
favorite.
Oh,
DC
my
fans
God.
think that
At,
Brandon hates
Janelle
DC.
Wheeler,
R.I.P. Janelle's
Janelle
mentions.
Wheeler.
Oh no.
Brandon knows this from experience.
Yeah. Bringing it back around to Marvel. So we just.
I said I liked Justice League.
And he still got
I liked
arrested.
it too.
Those are like the opposite problems. Wow, we're just going across the spectrum really fast here. You guys ever actually been successful on like a seesaw? Like, it's good.
Here.
Like,
Nope. I never had anyone to seesaw with me.
Oh.
Sad. Only child
wow,
problems.
Oh my God.
so sad. Like,
What?
What is the next topic, Kofi?
the next topic I was just trying to say is, let's close it out by saying we just did quarantine watch party for Endgame. Was there anything last night watching through that really kind of just struck a chord with you guys, and maybe just seeing it again, or just seeing it again with the whole kind of crowd at a distance effect? Was there anything that jumped out at you as new or heartfelt or something just 1 year
You want
later?
me to go first?
Sure.
After beginning my comic journey with Doctor Strange, my love for him has grown exponentially. And
Yes.
the on your left moment with all of the beautiful portals coming through, just it made me cry this time. When that happened, my crying started in a different area, but because of I'm crazy about Doctor Strange even more now. And it just made the experience of watching Endgame even better. And honestly, Infinity War too, because he has a bigger role in Infinity War. Yeah.
Matt?
I will say, I think I was not a big fan of when Thor and Rocket Raccoon go back to Asgard. Like, there's a cool moment in there, but like, it didn't hit me like it hit other people. And I was always like, well, they could have gotten rid of that and it'd been fine. It would have been okay. And I think I actually appreciated that more watching it with other people who really like, there was a lot of people reacting to that sequence, and that kind of bled over to me. Like, I was like, okay, like I liked it more. Like, it's still not my favorite part of Endgame, but I appreciated that whole sequence way more than I did before. So I will give the crowd that, because that very much won me over.
BD?
I'll make all the Black Widow jokes I want on Twitter. However, I think Black Widow should have got a funeral. I think she should have got recognized. They really, like, I remember watching the movie for the first time, and I didn't take it seriously because I was like, well, okay, she died, but like, everybody's coming back. And then we get the all-female Avengers sequence without Black Widow, and then a Tony Stark funeral, and it just feels kind of disrespectful. Like, I'll joke all day about Black Widow. My heart dropped. This scene landed. I'll joke about it, but she did deserve a bit more recognition and a moment of recognition. So that's my takeaway. But also, I did want to shout out that this Thursday, the keys to Quarantine Watch Party are being handed out again. Matt took the keys. He had a Witcher party. He gave the car back in fine shape. He put a few miles on it, added value, not like a real car. This car gains value. And then the keys now are going to Adam Barnhart, who got Vincent D'Onofrio and several others to do episode 304 of Daredevil on Thursday at 9 p.m. So you just go on Netflix, queue up episode 304, and then you just press play at 9 p.m. Eastern time, and you tweet along with there's like 7 people from Daredevil doing it. Unfortunately, Charlie Cox is not on Twitter, but there might be a surprise with that in a way. So yeah, that's a cool thing coming up as well.
Yep, we were gonna hype that, but let's start now. For me, Endgame, just to close out this very long argumentative segment. I think what kind of stuck out to me, and it's not just watching it last night, but I've really been watching a lot of that video of the crowd kind of going nuts. That one video that really went viral.
That's a good video.
It's a very good video to watch right now, because things are dark, and it is a very inspiring video. And one thing I think I took away more so is, if you ever wonder like why people are like always arguing about like diversity in movies and like superheroes and stuff and why that's important, I think the thing that really struck me about Endgame, it was just hearing the amount of people cheer for like Black Panther when he comes out of that portal, and people of just like all kinds losing their minds for like a Black character that was amazing to me, and like just what they had accomplished with that movie in that moment. And then the A-Force moment, and like why so many ladies love that moment, and just all of that. Those moments in the big fight like really kind of stood out to me, as did right now just Cap with on the left, as you say, because when we need to help each other and do so much these days, and we're like relying on each other to kind of get through these times, that moment really sticks out when you feel like, yes, there could be somebody on your left to help you out. I think that Russo's just nailed that perfectly, and that's going to go down, as one of the most iconic kind of like big move me moments that you'll see replayed in all those freaking montages that come down the line for like cinema and all that stuff. But yeah, that's great stuff. And that whole end battle was the culmination of a lot, as we've been rewatching these movies recently. Pretty spectacular. So
I want to, with your comment on Black Panther, I think it's really cool to point out that like in this movie, like, which this Infinity Saga began before a lot of this recognition of diversity in movies began, and it was only 12 years ago this franchise started. But this movie that kind of starts with 3 white dudes fighting the big villain, and the next time we get a culmination like this, it's going to be way more diverse for that, like whatever the new Trinity is. Like you're going to have Black Panther and Captain Marvel and other people, and we're all going to be cheering for everybody. And I think Marvel's really
it's going to be
doing
cool,
a job.
man.
Now we need a Spanish hero. We just need a Spanish hero to make that nice Trinity.
Who do you want?
A little Asian hero.
We do,
like,
bro.
We need to mix it up.
Yeah.
Show Luis his respect, bro.
Hey, all right. I want a superhero.
You don't like the 3 wombats? No.
I want a superhero.
Nah,
and I'm just putting that out there. Nova be a great thing.
Sam Alexander.
Yeah, man. Just saying.
Did you just tell Robbie Amell he could be?
I did. I'm saying you could be. I said there's also Richard Rider.
Listen to a Robbie Amell interview for a classic gas up, maneuver by Matthew Aguilar.
I think Sam Alexander is the way they're going to go, because it is a really good opportunity to introduce the first Hispanic hero to the Marvel Universe.
Yeah, no, I mean, we've all been on the same page about this. In case you guys are just now catching up with us, what we want to see is kind of like a mentoring Richard Rider, Sam Alexander kind of combination story.
Just mix it up. Let Richard Rider be his dad.
Yeah, that's what we said. I mean, that's the great hook.
That'd be great.
Yeah, have him be.
But give me my Richard Rider story, you sons.
Yeah, exactly.
I
mean, we need all that. I mean, that's how it has to begin. Wasn't that you who wrote that? How it has to begin? The Nova.
Well, they already teed it. First of all, the fact that they cut. You got me on my Nova horse now. They cut him from Guardians of the Galaxy after putting him in the script. Okay, fine. Then they put him in a draft of Infinity War, where straight up out of Avengers vs. X-Men comic, he comes crashing into Earth to warn everybody, just like Sam Alexander did. But it's Richard Rider saying Thanos is coming because Thanos just destroyed Xandar. It makes perfect sense. It would have been awesome, and they cut that too. So,
even though that comic sucks. That's the only good part. That's the only good part of that comic.
That comic is terrible. That doesn't even, no, that part wasn't even that great. I'm just a Nova fan, so I don't care. But that comic did suck. Nova didn't even like play a part after that.
Yeah,
did
no.
He? He just kind of went back to his.
All right. We're getting off topic. Let's move on. We're going to talk real quick because we have some new horror stuff coming, as I said. We got a new horror series coming for the young ones, and a new horror series coming for the old ones. The young ones are a Goosebump live action TV series is in the works from Sony Pictures and Scholastic Entertainment. And if you know anything, Goosebumps, of course, is the YA horror series that was real popular in the 90s. It even has a few TV iterations that, in the 90s, it had its own TV series that became really popular into the 2000s. But it kind of died off. But then it had a resurgence. And a couple years back, there were the Goosebumps movies that came out, and they did all right. But this sounds like we're getting back to the kind of the classic series. And this is kind of a good, like they're bringing back the Are You Afraid of the Dark limited series. They did, and now they're doing Goosebumps. So I thought this is about the kind of amount of scary that Matt can handle.
Wow.
So I thought he would be.
That's hurtful. That's hurtful. Can I just say that I'm excited for this, by the way, as a big fan of the 90s live action show on Fox. That was that was really fun and enjoyable back then. I will say I was not a fan of the movies, like either one. I didn't really think, I thought A House with a Clock in Its Walls or whatever was a better Goosebumps movie than Goosebumps, and they both had Jack Black. I didn't love that. So I do hope they're not very scary. They didn't have the tension that, at least a little bit, which even if you go back and watch some of those 90s episodes, there's even a little tension for as weird and corny as they are. There's actually a little bit. So I kind of hope they up the stakes a little bit, because it could be cool.
Well, that's my problem today, is because I was on the set for Goosebumps, the first movie, and I was just drilling them with questions. I was basically my whole theme of that whole interview was just, yo, are you guys really going to hammer these little idiots with some real horror? Are you going to scare them? Are you going to do something here? You going to do something? And they're like, well, we're trying to find a balance. And I was just like, that sounds coward. That just sounds
it sounds like it came out, right? It was
like
very generic.
I didn't think about that. Yeah.
Man, you got to scare them. And they're just like, well, kids can't be upset these days. They need their safe spaces. I'm like, you need to freak these little losers out.
When I was a little kid and I was reading those books, I was petrified, but it was I kept wanting, it's where I became a masochist, because I hated reading them because they scared me so much, but I couldn't stop. I read every single Goosebumps book. I had the entire collection. I actually never watched the TV show. I just love the books. So I'm always looking for some kind of feeling that I get, or feeling that I got when I was reading the books.
Well, I'm a product of the Coke-fueled 80s. So, I grew up reading, Goosebumps. I had to read Choose Your Own Adventures, where your choices in reading made you die. You died often.
It was
because of your stupid choices.
Yes.
And,
I will give kudos to Are You Afraid of the Dark? I feel like they got the formula way, that's a lot closer to what those
that
were.
Show freaked you
I
out.
watched that show as a kid, and yes, it messed with me. I actually couldn't watch it at night.
Yeah, and the reboot's good.
Behind my ears and stuff
good.
now, anyway.
Oh,
but so Goosebumps is coming back. Let's talk about what's going on the adult side. So HBO is making who knew? HBO is making a Hellraiser TV series based on the Hellraiser mythology. And they've tapped director David Gordon Green, who did the recent Halloween kind of reboot, to do helm the pilot and do other episodes to kind of oversee the first season. We got the guy from Battlestar Galactica and Daredevil, Mark Verheiden, and Michael Dougherty, who did X-Men United and Godzilla, King of the Monsters, and Trick or Treat. So, it's going to be a loose continuation of the original mythology of the films, and which were inspired by Clive Barker's novella, and kind of made this race called the Cenobites, and their iconic representative Mr. Pinhead, and so basically, if you don't know anything about Hellraiser, because a lot of people know the iconography of Hellraiser, they know the dude with all the pins in his head, right?
Yes, that's what I know.
They don't actually
being
know
a Blockbuster and wanting to rent that movie, and my parents were like, absolutely not. But I just liked the cover.
Right, your parents were, because even I was permitted to see some messed up stuff as a kid, but Hellraiser is it's pretty intense. Basically,
is it
about these beings who come from another dimension, and they access their dimension through this puzzle box that if idiot humans open, it kind of lets them out. And basically they take you to this kind of dimension that's basically hell, where you are tortured in increasingly sadistic and masochistic ways. And that's how people get killed. So that's what happens. They basically get out, take people.
Wholesome entertainment.
Yeah, no. And it's what kind of sets it apart is Clive Barker's really crazy, and he plays with metaphysical kind of all kinds of oddities, not just traditional horror, but that metaphysical horror of other dimensions and realities and how we perceive that and all that. So a lot of it, when you go to their universe, it's just you perceiving yourself being cut up and hung on hooks and cut up into different pieces of flesh. And that's what the first Hellraiser is known for, these really intense kind of strobe light flash sequences of people being in this other dimension and experiencing, having their bodies just completely like just decimated and then reassembled,
down with the other
decimated
dimension
again, like
not,
basically
God,
what hell would
scary.
be, like
Yeah.
all that stuff, and trying to fight these beings. And so yeah, so it's a crazy thing. And so this is why you can play with this in a kind of like an HBO setting, I think, is because it is this whole idea and the metaphysical aspect of like, what
Sounds
is
like
this
it would
other
be a really
dimension?
great fit on Disney Plus.
Oh, stop it. But like, what is this other dimension? And the visuals you can do by kind of imagining this horrific other dimension, even if it's not the 80s kind of weird strobe kind of German techno rock like thing they had going on there. But you could play with like this whole idea of what this other dimension is and what these kind of horrific visions or nightmares or experiences that people get put through are. So I'm kind of interested to see what they do with that, because that is kind of the opening, and that's why it would make sense on HBO. You can get kind of really artistic with your torture, I guess. And so
that should be the tagline.
Yeah.
That should be
it's a tagline for this show, and as my host, it's on my hosting resume. Like, get artistic. Get artistic with your torture. Yeah, so I don't think we have, as always, we don't really have a firm timeline for any of this, for either of these shows, because we don't know when we're out of the house. So we'll stay tuned on that. Alrighty then. So when we come back, we're going to get into our deep dive, and today we're going to talk real quick about the movie Code 8, which is on Netflix now, before we then throw to our interview with the star of the film, Robbie Amell. So stay tuned for all of that. All right. So Code 8. So basically, Code 8 was a short film in 2016 that starred Robbie Amell, who you know from The Flash or The Tomorrow People, or from the great young adult movie The Duff. Basically, it was about a world in which some people, it's kind of a My Hero Academia thing, if you know that anime manga series. It's basically a world where some people are born with superpowers, and this superpowers are kind of almost like a metaphor for like immigration status or something, or just being a second-class citizen or a minority population. Because they have superpowers, it's a very X-Men type scenario where people kind of really hate and fear people's superpowers, but it's kind of grounded in a slightly futuristic version of our world where the superpowers exist, some more advanced robotics technology to build these things called Guardians, which police the superpowered people, exist. And basically superpowered people are treated like this dangerous minority population, and they're kind of mistreated in society. And we meet a guy named Connor Reed, who is Robbie Amell, and he is a guy who's just trying to make ends meet to help his mom who's sick. But he is a very powerful electric, because there's categories. They have this all broken down into categories of what kind of powers you have. It's all very government regulated and official. So he's a very powerful electric. And
I really wanted a Hickman chart to accompany this movie.
Right, yeah. It'd be great for like a Hickman style comic chart, like it would. I mean, and it would. Code 8 would be a great fit for that. But who knows, maybe one day. Yeah, so he falls in with, it's this kind of classic tale of, it's kind of superheroes meets like a heist film almost. He's a good guy, but he kind of falls in with this bad crowd of dudes who are led by this guy named Garrett, who's played by Robbie Amell's cousin, Arrow star Stephen Amell. And they're planning these heists because Stephen Amell's character is involved with some organized crime stuff that he needs to kind of get on top of and owes people money. So they're pulling these heists, this kind of crew of people. They're desperate. They each have superpowers, and they got to kind of do it and stay ahead of the cops who are used to hunting people with superpowers, And so that's kind of what Code 8's all about. And it's kind of a nice little world opening movie. It's on Netflix now. It was really popular. It's gotten popular because obviously it's a new feature film that kind of touches on the super powered genre while we're all locked down. But it's kind of cool because it opens the door to a world as just a complete standalone movie. There are different kind of questions and things that you would have in terms of like characterization. I think there could have been more on like Stephen Amell's character and like where he comes from and more complexity to him and things like that. But it's arguably just opening the door to this world because we are getting a series. This world's continuing. It's going to go to Quibi and be a Quibi series. So that's going to be happening pretty soon. But the concepts that it introduces of this world of superpowers, it's something that's familiar, but it spins it enough and kind of makes it its own that it does feel very unique. I mean, but it's basically X-Men and the Sentinels, but it doesn't feel that way, and it doesn't feel like a knockoff. It feels like a very good concept of like something like Heroes was trying to do back in the early 2000s, only with like more real world kind of indie movie grit to it almost. So something like a District 9 somewhere in there. And yeah, and it was interesting because of just how the world functions and seeing superpowers kind of applied into society. Like one guy's a crime lord who stays on top of the pile by being able to be a psychic and read people's minds and know who's lying to him and stuff like that. And just seeing that kind of stuff applied to kind of real world characters who are street and level and kind of urban level and working class and stuff like that was kind of really interesting to me. So it was actually a good watch right now, and I enjoyed Code 8. So, and I'm not just saying that because I'm about to talk to the guy who started. I really do. And I want to watch. This series is actually going to get me to maybe watch Quibi because I'm kind of interested to see how this continues.
I'm going to ask you that. I didn't know if you had already started watching Quibi yet.
No, I have not, but now I have a reason.
My phone just heard you say series and it thought you said, "Hey Siri." And
oh yeah, that's happened.
Is that what that was? I was wondering what that was. I think your comparison to Heroes is actually perfect. That hadn't occurred to me, but I think that's what I always wanted from Heroes, and actually what Heroes had for like the first half of season 1 was a very grounded approach to powers and to people like living their normal lives and how powers would interact with that. And I thought this, within 20 minutes, like the first 20 minutes, really does a good job of that. And like including the intro, and also just that first 20 minutes of establishing the world, how powers work, but on a very personal level, and how they affect your day-to-day life in this also very, I mean, we've seen where machines take prominence in society. We've seen movies like that before. We've seen sci-fi stuff. We've seen stuff with powers and being banned and outlawed. These concepts are not, unfamiliar. But I thought it did a really good job of just like twisting those concepts just enough in a, left or right direction to make it feel different. And when it was coupled with the very personal, grounded story of, essentially a mother and her son, and then just stakes and the effect of like what you would do for someone, the links you would.
And like weirdly enough, we never seen like a crime heist thriller that takes superpowers and like
not like this, like the way it breaks down like how each person's role in a very short amount of time too. It's not like it goes through this giant Ocean's 12 sequence of establishing who these people are. You get introduced to some of them very quick, and you don't even know what they do. And then it shows you, and it just all fits because you get to know him. Like there's the guy, the guy who can't talk is hilarious. But again, he doesn't say a word. He maybe motions a couple of times, but you see like how he's worked into this heist and like his role, and all these things are just done. They're not told to you through a bunch of exposition. They're just done. But it fits, and the pace is quick. I really dug it. I dug it a lot more than I thought I would, because once I saw the premise, that. So what'd you think?
I was like, oh no, I just don't. It's on Netflix, and I honestly went in and I knew nothing. Kofi was like, watch this movie. I had no idea what it was going to be about. No context whatsoever.
With advice like that from Kofi.
I know. I take it blindly. That's how I watched Love Is Blind and The Circle and all of those shows. So, and Tiger King, because I had to eat crow on almost all of those. Kofi's pretty good about that. But as soon as I started it, I actually rewound the beginning because there was like construction outside, and I was so into it right away with all of the kind of background dialogue and explaining the rift between people with powers and not, and how it had developed from, they used to work in factories and help support society, and then they were all laid off and made kind of useless to the community and to, the regular people, I guess, because that they started developing machinery that could take their place. I mean, you got all of that in the first like opening scene, like the opening credits, which was really great. And it was just really easy to watch. And like you weren't sitting there wondering what was going on. It was very clear, and I knew the storyline, but it wasn't predictable in a like non-engaging way. So I really appreciate it. I liked the movie. It was a nice change of pace, because I've been watching Indiana Jones.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
Yeah. So I really liked it. It was relevant and cool and superheroes, but also political. And I thought it was good. I liked it all.
Yeah, I thought it was pretty good.
Brandon hated it.
No, I liked it. I watched it over the course of 3 nights. Like I watched it like 40 minutes at a time, and I would kind of fall asleep and wake up, watch the next day. But I came back and I was like, I want to watch the rest of that movie. I think it, like you said, the thing how it showed you and didn't tell you, I really appreciated that. I think it could have benefited from like stronger character writing. Like it just felt like, I know this was a project really important to Stephen Amell from the crowdfunding to release. Like I know this was something really cool for him, and it felt like a cool way for him to flex a different muscle than Arrow. I mean, he was very different. Like he got to curse, he got to do a bunch of stuff that Oliver Queen wouldn't necessarily do, but at times he would, but we wouldn't agree with it if he did. And so it felt like that was kind of what this became a vehicle for. But Robbie Amell did a great job. I would have loved to see a little bit more. I don't know how to put a little nuance to that relationship with his mom. I thought that was really cool. And I would have liked to see more from Amell's character, just on a character standpoint, on a reason to be invested or not in him. But he played like that mysterious kind of jerk. Can you trust him or not? And it ended up being pretty cool. And he ended up being kind of a good guy in the end. There were really cool action sequences, though, and the stuff they did with the powers, like especially the moment where the guy who can't talk gets pulled back because he's getting shot at. I thought that was really cool. Clever. That was probably one of the highlights of the movie for me. And that whole sequence ended up being really shocking. But it was cool. And I was wondering how they were going to write themselves out of the corner of Robbie Amell having to either be the bad guy to save his mom or say goodbye to his mom, but still be a good person. And they did that well enough. I thought it was good. I give it 7 out of 10. I liked it.
Well, you're going to get to see more about Stephen Amell's character, because Robbie Amell tells us some interesting things about where the Quibi Code 8 series will pick up, because it's the same characters. Both Amells are in it, and it's just a direct sequel. So it's continuing this story, and there's some interesting insights we get about how that picks up. Which is my cue to, what's that? I don't think so yet. I don't know. I'm not an expert on Quibi. What's that?
I thought it was paid.
I don't know. I have no idea.
Quibi it's a paid service, but they're doing a free 90-day trial. So
there you go. Boom.
You get hooked a lot 90 days is a ton.
Yeah.
So it's a fair try. So when Code 8 hits, I think I'm going to do it, because I do want to see how this world goes. But that's my throw. Till now I got to throw, because we are going to get out of here and go talk to Robbie Amell about Code 8, about the Quibi series, and about a whole bunch more. So be sure to stick around and listen to that segment, because it's coming up next. Okay, thank you for sticking with us on Comic Book Nation. We've just been talking about the hit Netflix film Code 8. And with us now is the star of Code 8, and you know him from The Flash, and you know him from Tomorrow People, and you know him from The Duff. It's Mr. Robbie Amell is here with us. Thank you for joining us. Thank you for taking some time out from, I know things, even though things might be on lockdown, they're still busy. So thank you for, again, coming on Comic Book Nation and talking with us.
Thanks for having me. I'm happy to be here.
So you're not even a stranger to these parts on Comicbook.com. We've talked to you before. We talked to you about Code 8 at the end of last year, and we wanted to start by just kind of checking in with you, because things have been happening. This movie has come out, it's caught on, it's become a hit. You now have a kind of spin-off series that's taking place and kind of developing over at Quibi. And so we wanted to start off and just kind of getting an update from you about where you are now with the kind of Code 8 spin-off, the Quibi kind of expansion of the movie's concept. I know things are kind of hectic right now, obviously, given circumstances. So where is that project standing right about now?
We're still in pre-production. Essentially with Quibi, it's 12 10-minute episodes. So essentially it's a 2-hour movie cut into 12 parts. So we're about halfway through the scripts. Jeff Chan and Chris Pare, who wrote the movie, are working with a couple more writers on the Quibi side. It'll take place about 5 years after the movie ends. It is a direct sequel, but you don't have to have seen the movie to enjoy the Quibi series. It definitely helps with the world building and the characters. We're just really excited about it. I mean, we knew that we wanted to continue the Code 8 story. We knew there was more there, and Quibi, loved the movie early on and pursued it, and they've been a great partner so far, and so we're just pretty excited about it. It's gonna hit pretty hard. It's very action heavy this time around.
This was one of the interesting things we really were excited to kind of have you on about, because you are kind of one of our first big insights into what Quibi is all about and what it's like developing content for that platform. Because for people who are still learning, Quibi is kind of a streaming service that's designed for kind of cellular or mobile viewing, 10-minute episodes, as you said. So what is it like to develop content from Quibi? You kind of already alluded to it being a 2-hour movie that you just view as cut into segments. Is that how you guys, just the overall kind of view of it and philosophy, or do you have to do something to make each segment kind of catchy and kind of hook people to the next segment and so on and so forth?
It's kind of a mix of a movie and TV, because each one will stand as an episode. And with Quibi, how it works is, say that the new show comes out on Tuesday, they give you one episode, and then it's one episode a day for 12 days. So once it's been out for 12 days, you can binge the whole thing. But until then, you want to keep people coming back day after day. So the nice thing was, we always looked at Code 8 as potentially being a series. So with Quibi, we get kind of the best of both worlds. It's a movie and a series. You need little hooks at the end of each episode, but it's also kind of feels a little bit like a book into chapters. It reminds me of like watching a Quentin Tarantino movie, where he breaks up a lot of his movies into chapters. So I think that would be the best example. Creatively, they've been awesome to work with. Very minor notes, and we've actually agreed with a lot of the notes that they've given us. We're just really excited about it. I've been watching some of the Quibi stuff. I think that their platform will probably grow as maybe the world goes a little back to normal, just because I think that it is very much like a work break type app. If you got a lunch break, you watch an episode. If you're commuting to and from work, you're going to watch it. I think that a lot of it is a commuter's medium. So we'll see, but we're pretty excited.
Is it challenging to do action and to kind of handle the spectacle and action, because you're playing for a smaller format essentially, or does that change you guys' approach? You just the same?
I mean, when we were first talking about doing the Quibi thing, it was actually right around when we got the Instagram versions of our trailer. And one of the versions on Instagram is widescreen, kind of smaller, and the other one was a full screen watch, or a square. And we actually really liked the way that it played out, and kind of the perspective shift. It's just something different. I mean, everybody's seen so much at this point. So we just liked the way it looked, and we were like, this would be cool. I can handle a feature version of this for sure.
And one more thing I just wanted to ask you before I throw it to Matt. Now, because of the kind of coronavirus pandemic, has it, with all the horrible things going on, has it kind of weirdly helped Code 8 stand out? Because I've seen how the staying power, because there is a lack of kind of content, this has been having the staying power on Netflix. And I feel like more and more people are kind of catching on and kind of digging into it and coming away and liking it and coming away ready for more. Have you guys found that it's been ramping up since people have been on lockdown and kind of checking out streaming?
I mean, I think there's a lot of eyeballs for sure. And to be honest with you, I think, obviously I wouldn't trade the success of Code 8 for a pandemic across the world.
Let's just put that out there. Yes, we're not.
I would,
circumstantial. This is all circumstantial.
I would trade that but I think that a nice thing about it is it's sci-fi and it gives people a little bit of an escape. So what's been really nice is seeing the response on, on social media of people being like, this was a really nice break for me for, to kind of stop thinking about what's happening in the rest of the world for a minute. And obviously there's so much more important stuff going on than our movie, but it is nice to be able to provide people with a little bit of an escape for, 90 minutes and just to kind of let things go and watch a movie.
Well, speaking of the feature film version, and you guys have been thinking about a series for a minute, so I imagine like some ideas kind of got bounced around or changed and things like that throughout the development. Was the feature film ever, the endings, were they ever a little bit different? Because we see each character kind of get their not so happy ending in some cases, but their kind of hook for that like next step in their journey. Were they specifically the Nia and Mary part? Was there ever a version that Nia ended up dying and Mary was still around, or that some of the other characters kind of had their next steps played around with in a big way?
We toyed with actually going through with it, and it just felt too dark. I like it robbed Connor of any humanity. It isn't what Mary would want. Like, she the last thing she would want would be to survive because of someone else. So this was the version, or that was never shot. It was only ever talked about. There were a couple alternate versions of the way that Connor and Nia leave things, but ultimately we just wanted it to feel kind of real, and we didn't want to close it because we knew that we wanted to keep the story going. And the relationship between Connor and Nia is super difficult to wrap up in a short amount of time. So I think the idea would be, we will continue to show what happened with their relationship moving forward, but we didn't have time to continue that after the climax of the movie.
I will say you kind of got the best of both worlds, because there was a part you held out just long enough for me to go, oh wait, are they really gonna do it? Because there's that moment, and then there's that moment of very like uncomfortable feeling, and that's where it hit. I was like, no way, and then it was like, oh okay.
Yeah, my hand was on my hand was on the exit button. I was like, if this, like, I don't know. I was like, I can't go. I don't know what's left in this movie.
I think we lose everybody if he goes through with it. We lose a lot of people at the end of that movie, and we probably can't make a sequel.
Yes. Follow the worst person. Yes. No.
Yeah.
But and also you kind of spoke a bit about the world building that you kind of get to explore that. And we see pieces of like what law enforcement looks like, and we see kind of the societal stuff, like the opinions about people with powers and things like that. It's touched on in the movie, but we don't get to kind of explore that because of course we're kind of focused on a couple main characters. How are you exploring those different pieces in the new series?
I mean, we're just going to continue to build out the world, but at its core, our movies are always going to be about the people living in this world. And we want the world building and the sci-fi to blend into the background, because if you don't care about the people and the stories and the relationships, and invest in that, then the world building won't matter. So at its core, it's always going to rely on the people, but we will continue to dive into it, and you'll see a little bit more of the underground and a little bit more of how this world works. But the sequels will still continue to follow my character and Steven's character pretty closely.
Speaking of you guys, how was it kind of, because you guys are cousins, I mean, you're family, how was it kind of playing out the dynamic between Garrett and yourself in the movie when you guys, because he is kind of a hard ass towards you? Did it ever drum up any kind of old family rivalries when you guys were just playing that out?
No, I mean, we're super competitive as is, but that's never changed. But the cool thing was we had never really worked together. Like, we had a small bit on The Flash as Firestorm and Arrow, but we never even talked. So the cool thing was we didn't shoot in chronological order, but mine and Steven's scenes, the first few days we had together actually were early scenes on together, or early scenes for Connor and Garrett. So we got to feel each other out as actors on screen, which actually worked for the progression of our characters, because that's a weirder thing for us than, the bond that Garrett and Connor develop throughout the movie, and where they become almost, friends, like a mentor-mentee relationship. That's easier for us to play because, we're family. So it was actually kind of nice that we just had that little bit of unfamiliarity at the beginning.
And this was Code 8. What's really interesting is last time you kind of talked with us, we were just talking about the whole journey that it took for this film. It started out as a short. You co-financed this thing. It got a lot of popularity on social media boards. So this was like a big return for you, albeit with some kind of switches and changes to the original premise. Characters obviously were switched. Roles were switched around for some actors. So kind of following that thread, we'd be remiss if we didn't kind of ask you, we are Comicbook.com, if you can make this kind of return, like what other big returns? I know you have a lot of fans over in the DC universe because you were one half of Firestorm. And I know we were missing you during things like Crisis, but where would you like, if you kind of had more the options, where would you like to come back? Because DC, the TV universe, everything about it's kind of changing right now with everything coming with HBO Max and DC Universe and those series, plus the Arrowverse. Steven's kind of retired and left that mantle open. Where would you like to get back in if you could? Would you go back into the Arrowverse? Would you do something like the DC movie side? Where would you like to kind of fit in? Do you have any favorite characters, stuff like that?
Yeah, I mean, I have no I don't discriminate against what superhero I would like to play. Part of which because like Guardians of the Galaxy came out and I was not familiar with the Guardians of the Galaxy, and I loved the movie and I thought Chris Pratt was fantastic. I didn't know the story of Thor Ragnarok at all, and it's my favorite Marvel movie. DC I'm a little more familiar with, but I'm sure there are a ton of characters that they're going to end up making that I'm not familiar with. So ultimately I think just working with great people would be ideal. I would always go back to the Flash. With that, it's a little more difficult because it's not fair to not be there and then come in and try and be, a main character. So it's fun to be able to come in and cameo, but they have so many characters that are due their time that you never want to be the guy that's coming in and stealing anything away. With that being said, I love all those people. It would be great to work with Danielle some more and Brant and that whole cast. So, it would be fun to go back. I'll never say never when they call. If I'm available, I'll go. But yeah, I mean, it would be great. They're doing a Green Lantern show on HBO Max, which sounds really cool. It feels like they're going to reboot the DC film universe because I don't know. Rumor has it Henry Cavill's done, and who knows what's going to happen with Flash. Like, it's one of those things where so many things are up in the air, especially with this pandemic. You don't know when things are going to go back to filming. So, I don't know. I'm just keeping my ears and eyes open for something.
Well,
cool.
We got to throw some fuel on this fire because you did say you had a fondness for several Marvel movies. So if you had to hop the fence and go to the other side, are there any favorite Marvel characters you haven't seen on screen yet that you would throw your hat in the ring for?
I mean, it's like I said, I'm sure there's some that I'm not familiar with that I think would be awesome. Just like, whatever the next Guardians of the Galaxy is, that would be really cool. I really like the idea of Marvel, doing their version of the X-Men. So someone in the X-Men would be awesome. They're going to reboot Fantastic Four, something, there's so many possibilities that any of them would be cool.
I will say Green Lantern, Kyle Rayner, just throwing that out there. I think Robbie would make a really great Rayner.
Don't try to push your Kyle Rayner perspective on Robbie Amell. We gotta let him choose. What would you be? Would you be a Hal Jordan? Would you be a Kyle Rayner, Guy Gardner? What do you see yourself as?
Whichever one they're making.
Boom.
There you go.
That's a great question. Great answer.
That is the expert answer right there. Yes.
Yes.
Oh, yes. Final questions, Matt. Did you have anything?
No, other than saying that as for Marvel, I plant seeds. Like that's just what I do. I just throw the ideas out there.
That's a nice way of saying instigating. Yeah.
I just throw ideas out there. I think Robbie would make a great Nova as well. I'm just throwing that one out there. So if they make one, he can give has that answer. We'll take that same answer. We'll put Marvel in space of the DC. Done. It's done. Too close.
One last question I had.
Either one sounds great.
One last question I had, which has been kind of interesting. I'm a big Star Trek fan and things like that. Is now that because Code 8 is still very much a science fiction heavy thing, has this pandemic kind of now made you guys do any narrative switches yet, or kind of consider things that you now have to kind of implement into a sci-fi world? Because I know this is going to be this is going to be a question for all sci-fi for going forward. I'm just kind of wondering, since you guys are going to become some of the first out of the gate, how are you looking at that?
I think, Code 8 takes place in Lincoln City. It's kind of it's an alternate universe. We wanted to ground it in reality, but it's not, it's not necessarily our reality. So I don't think we're going to try and lean too much into that. I think another thing is, we don't want to, if people are going to use it as an escape, we don't want to,
bring them right back.
Kind of keep reminding people about it. But the other side of it is, we don't know how prevalent this is going to be in our society moving forward. Like how much of our reality right now is going to be our reality in 6 months, in 9 months, in a year, in 2 years. So I think part of it is a little bit wait and see. The interesting thing is the Amazon show I have coming out on May 1st, Upload, we shot the pilot 2 years ago. We shot the series first season last year, and there are parts in the pilot that look like today because you've got people on the subway wearing masks, and it looks like it's today because of the virus, when it was really a take on pollution and where the world would be 15 years from now with global warming and not taking care of our planet. So a little bit of it is just kind of luck of the draw on that side of things. But I think it's difficult, if you're going to do something that's grounded in the real world, it's definitely gonna be something you have to address and think about.
All right, well, that's it for me. Matt, do you have anything else?
No, I stand by my picks, and I really enjoyed Code 8, by the way. Also, I will say, Code 8 has one of the coolest intros. I'm gonna give props to the the team who assembled the intro. I thought, as far as world building, I actually thought that was one of the most condensed and perfect ways to get across what the world is like, what it is to live in this place, and see how powers were treated over time in a very short amount of time. So props. I just want to give
I'm really glad you said that. When our first test screening, we didn't have that. And there were so many questions at the end of the movie that, Jeff, who directed the movie, fought it for a long time. And after that test screening, he was like, we got to do this. And, it was actually the team that did all of the drone POV of the HUD systems and stuff. They were like, give us a shot at the opening title sequence. We think we can do something cool. And they crushed it. They absolutely nailed it. I think it really set, like you said, it sets the tone and builds the world. And that way, once you meet, Connor and Mary at the beginning, you feel like you're in, which is so important in our world.
Absolutely. So yes. Oh my gosh. Yeah, I can't imagine it without the intro.
Cool.
So
I'll tell them. Thank you, man. That's really cool.
All right. This has been our chat with Robbie Amell, star of Code 8, the upcoming series Upload, and hopefully many other things and Green Lantern related things.
Yeah. You heard it here first.
Thank you again for stopping by Comic Book Nation, Robbie, and we hope to talk to you again in the future.
Thanks, guys. Nice talking to you.
All right, so you got there. That was me and Matt talking to Robbie Amell. We want to thank him for coming on Comic Book Nation. If you guys haven't, go on Netflix, check out Code 8. If it sounds interesting to you, keep your eye out for the series. Coming to Quibi. Maybe when we get back out in the world, as we were talking about, it'll be more fitting. But it's interesting to hear that maybe they're going to cut these all together into one big cut when a whole season airs. So keep your eyes out for that too, because Code 8 will continue if you are enjoying it. that'll do it for this episode of Comic Book Nation. I want to thank everybody who came on, Mr. Brandon Davis from taking time out from his world-famous parties to join us, the little people again. Janelle Wheeler, Matt Aguilar, because they're paid to be here, and Mr. Robbie Amell for coming on and talking with us.
I'm not doing this out of the goodness of my heart.
We're just giving your thing a platform. Don't get too crazy. Like, we're giving your thing a platform. Don't get crazy. All right, so that'll do it for this episode of Comic Book Nation. If you're just now getting into the show during this quarantine season, you can find new episodes every Wednesday and Friday on Comicbook.com, where you can subscribe to our RSS feed to get regular updates about the show, or we're on your favorite podcast listening platforms. That includes iTunes, iHeartRadio, Google Podcasts, Google Playlists, Stitcher, and Spotify. You can find videos of the show on the Comicbook.com YouTube page, where BD is also throwing up some new stuff up there on that old YouTubes. So check that out too. We got second printing. We got Talk Shop on Instagram. He's doing. We got a lot going on.
I played the Predator game on Tuesday, and that game sucks.
Oh yeah, that yeah. Oh, we should play.
You gotta get on that Animal Crossing grind.
Stop derailing my outro. This is.
Hey, you're talking about our content. I'm letting them know.
Animal Crossing.
Animal Crossing. There you go. So that's all the things we got going on Comicbook.com. Like we said, Daredevil, Quarantine Watch Party, Season 3, Episode 4, with Vincent D'Onofrio and other cast members coming up. By the time you hear this, you'll be just in enough time to get set to watch with us, so be sure to tune into that this Thursday. Yeah, we got a lot going on over here at Comic Book, but be sure to catch us on Comic Book Nation. And if you're just getting in the show and you like it, go on iTunes, leave us a 5-star review, because as soon as we are back in this office, we are going to send you guys some T-shirts for your 5-star reviews. So get ready for all of that.
2029.
Stop it. That'll do it for this episode. I want to thank everybody again. If you want to talk to any of us, you can talk to us at the hashtag Comic Book Nation. You can find me at Kofi Outlaw.
You can find me at Janelle Wheeler on Twitch and all the socials.
You can hit me up at Matt Aguilar CB.
And you can find me at Brandon Davis BD.
There you go. Thank you for tuning in. See you guys next time. This is Comic Book Nation. We out.
Deuces.